I'm so excited to have on the podcast today Jill Haskins. Jill is a former public school teacher, homeschool mom, microschool teacher, and now ecosystem builder with the National Microschooling Center, focused on helping to support microschool founders nationally as well as in her home state of Indiana. So excited to talk with you, Jill, about what you're seeing across the country and in your own backyard. Welcome to the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Jill, tell us a little bit about your background. You started off as a public school teacher before deciding to homeschool your children and then shift to microschooling. It's an interesting trajectory. I'd love to hear a little bit about your decision initially to go into public school teaching.
Yeah. From the time that I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a teacher. I don't really know. We don't have any teachers in our family, but it was just something that I always dreamed of. I have pictures that make me laugh to this day of my younger brother and I playing in our basement, and I was, the teacher. And back then, when you get in trouble, you put your name on the chalkboard with check marks next to your name, and so pictures of my brother and I playing school and printing out worksheets and things like that, and making him do all the things. So it was just something that I always wanted to get into. So it was just kind of a natural progression when I went into then college to be working towards my degree. And I always wanted to teach. I grew up in the Chicago area, so I always wanted to teach kind of in an inner city type of school. And when my husband and I were married, we moved out to Fort Wayne, and I taught in some really low income title schools just for a couple years. And I loved it, but it was one of the hardest things I've had to do, especially as a young mom with young kids at home. And so I decided to step back from that after just a couple years to be with my own kids from there. So
Yeah, and then you decided to homeschool your children. What led you to homeschooling?
um I had always said that I was never ever going to homeschool my kids. That was not
Why
something
was
that I
that?
what's
Yeah,
that?
why was that? Why were you so
Yeah.
adamantly against it?
I grew up in public school. My husband grew up in public school. My husband's extended family has some homeschool background in their family, and it was definitely different than what we um knew and appreciated. And and growing up in a public school background, I knew that I wanted to teach in public school. I wanted our kids to go to public school. So my kids originally, my two older kids started off in public school. My oldest son and my daughter, they were in public school until fourth and second grade. And the shift for us was my husband works retail and has worked retail for 25 years now. And so he was working a lot of nights and weekends when my kids were home. And when he was home, my kids were in school. And so we just didn't, we weren't functioning as a family. And we had a baby that was born with a congenital heart defect that passed away. And so our priorities for our families really shifted. We knew that we needed to be together as a family. We knew that the time with the kids being young was limited. And so we made the decision to pull them out of public school so that we could be a family. And we did that for 6.5 years. And it was the hardest and yet most rewarding 6.5 years of our life. It was so fun to see them learning and growing, and just being able to take a vacation during the off season, and yet still like being together as a family, which we hadn't previously had. So it was really good. So we did that for 6.5 years, and I don't regret a second of it.
Yeah, and then you switched from homeschooling to microschooling, not only for your children, but also for you as a microschool teacher. And
Yep.
I'm curious what that process was like. Were microschools sort of in your neighborhood previously, and then you just discovered them kind of through homeschooling? or was the microschooling movement growing in Indiana at the time, and there were new options for you to explore? I guess, what was it like
No.
there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So we got into a micro school because when my youngest son turned 7, he very much was not ready to start school, but because of the compulsory requirements, we had to start school with him. And I learned very quickly with him that he was not going to be as easy to homeschool as my other two. And so I began looking for other options, but because of my husband's schedule, we knew that a traditional schedule wasn't going to work. And so, what other options do we have? And I knew of one woman in our area that had kind of quote unquote been homeschooling other people's children in her home for longer than I had been alive, basically. And so I reached out to her and wanted to see if getting my younger son with somebody else that wasn't me, but still allowing that homeschool lifestyle would work for us. And so we enrolled him with her. Like I said, she was the only one, and she only had, maybe 10 to 12 kids in her little school in her house. And he did okay. He started making a little bit of progress, not a ton. That was in 2018. So he was with her 2018 to 2019, and then COVID hit. And so we brought him home that year in 2020. And just because COVID hit did not mean that he was learning any different. So very quickly I was like, oh, this is not going to last long term. So I had reached out to her, and during that time, she had picked up her school and moved it over to a church because she wanted her school to last, as she's getting older, and she wanted something that would continue on. And so I reached out to her and was like, hey, are you looking for a teacher at all? And she was like, oh, yes, actually, we've been praying for you to come for a while. So it was kind of the best of both worlds for me because I was still able to be involved in my kids' education. It was very much a homeschool-like environment. Switching from homeschool to the microschool was just a seamless transition for us. It was a lot of the same curriculum. It was a lot of the same routines, a lot of the same flexibility, and the added benefit then of I got to basically homeschool my kids in a school setting, adding in additional kids beyond that. Also because of COVID, my daughter was really struggling with the isolation and needing some friends. All of our co-ops and things had shut down. So it really was an answer to prayer for us in terms of just providing some extra people, getting us out of the house, yet continuing to be able to homeschool in a different way. So it was super fun. It was an easy transition for us, and it was great.
Yeah, and so then what happened next? I know you were with the microschool for a while as a teacher, and now you're
Mhm.
sort of moving into more of an ecosystem builder
Yeah.
in Indiana and beyond. So what have you noticed since 2020 in the microschool world in your community, in Indiana, and nationally?
Yeah. When I first came on um, at the micro school that I taught at, I knew I was going to be stepping into leadership of that school at some point. And so one of the things that I began asking was, what in the world is this thing? And are there other people that are doing this thing? And so I would hop on Google and I'd be like, modern one day, one room schoolhouse question mark. I don't know. And just start searching. I don't know what this thing is. I don't know what, the regulation is. And coming out of COVID, things had started really changing. So trying to kind of figure out, first of all, what in the world is this thing, and are there other people doing it? And if other people are doing it, how are they doing it? And why are they doing it? And what are they doing? And how can we connect? And that was really
And
the
that was,
first
as
time.
sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, Jill, but that was you're Googling this as a leader and a
Yeah.
teacher in a micro
Yeah.
school, not even as a parent, kind of looking
No.
for it. So you just sort of running this and was like, am I just an island here, or are
Yeah.
there other people doing this? Okay.
Yeah.
So then,
Yeah.
yeah, what did you find?
Yeah. So that was when the word microschool popped up. And so then I'm like, well, Googling definition of a microschool. And at that point, there wasn't really anything. It was just like a small learning environment. And then I started connecting with organizations like the National Microschooling Center and Vela Education Fund, and seeing that there were other people that were doing this thing. But the problem was they were all, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Arizona. So that was great. I was glad to know that there were other people doing this thing, but there was nothing that I was finding in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan. Fort Wayne is right up there in the corner where Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana meet. And so I was trying to even look, locally, going as far as Chicago, couldn't find anything. And so I began reaching out, especially to the National Microschooling Center, saying, I want to get connected. Here's what we're doing. There's other people that are out here. Do you guys know of anybody in Indiana? Vela had known of a handful of schools or organizations in Indiana. So I kind of started just reaching out, kind of cold calling people, being like, hey, I'm doing this weird thing up in Fort Wayne. I heard that you're doing a weird thing too. Can we connect? And so really in 2023, in June of 2023, is when I really started kind of connecting with Microschools in Indiana. And when I started in June of 2023, we knew of 5 total Microschools in Indiana. And the microschool that I was at was one of them. And so from there, it just kind of started spiraling. I just was searching, and then so-and-so would connect me with so-and-so, and this person would connect me with that person. So officially for the past year, I've been doing this ecosystem building work. And in Indiana right now, we have over 80 microschools identified, 30 of which launched this fall.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's growing significantly. I have connected with forest schools and, independent learning schools, farm and nature schools, all sorts of things, all across the state. Majority of them are Indianapolis and north from there. There's maybe 2 or 3 that are south of Indianapolis. So that's kind of my area that I'm going to be focusing on here soon. But Indiana has seen exponential growth. I'm hoping for by 2025, we'll have 150 identified with another 30 that'll launch next fall.
Oh,
So,
just amazing.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about microschool. You mentioned how the definition is a little bit fuzzy, and some of that is sort of by design, right? That
Yep.
we don't want to define away this very innovative emerging sector that a lot of founders, I'm sure you find this too, sort of self-identify as a microschool, even though they're leading all kinds of different models, from homeschool co-ops and hybrid homeschools to kind of state recognized private schools and everything in between. What are you seeing in Indiana among these sort of 80 schools currently, 80 microschools currently?
Yeah.
Are they primarily, serving homeschoolers? Are they registered private schools? What's the blend there?
Yeah, so most of them are operating as non-accredited private schools, which Indiana does kind of fall into the gray area of homeschooling. There are a handful of them that I know of that have been able to receive accreditation, which is great. But they do have to, kind of be a little more regimented in how they approach education. Most of them, like I said, are operating as non-accredited private schools. I would say there's probably equal parts that are operating as hybrids, 1, 2, 3-day hybrids, um, and the others then a full day program. Some of them, the hybrids, are doing two or 3 full days in person and then providing curriculum for the parents to do at home. Some of them are 2 or 3 days in person, and then the parents are choosing what to do those other days at home. It really just depends on the need of the community and of the need of the leaders and the families. I'm seeing a ton of them that are really shifting. Like, for example, there's one here in Fort Wayne that had been a forest school, a homeschool supplement, just a couple days a week. And this year she saw the need of a full day school. So she went and rented a space in a church in downtown Fort Wayne, and she's providing a 5-day school. So I'm seeing a lot of these leaders who have maybe been doing something for a few years, but then they're shifting as the need is changing, and that's super exciting too. But yeah, it really is operating, a lot of them under the kind of homeschool area. It's a gray area.
Yeah, and so if I heard your numbers correctly, 80 microschools now throughout
Mhm.
Indiana, 30 that opened in the last year.
Mhm.
What is driving that? Why are these education entrepreneurs motivated to create these models?
Yeah, it's a wide range. I mean, some of them are educators, former educators that are, just done with the system. They see that the system is broken, and want to do something different. Some of them are moms who, like me, had a kid that struggled and needed something else. And so they're creating it. Some of it is just like some people are just really smart and they're like, you know what? We need a secular homeschool hybrid program and there's nothing here. And so I'm going to create it because that's the need and that's where it's going to be successful. So some of them are just taking the bull by the horns and saying, hey, I'm going to create it because it doesn't currently exist. And that's good business practice. Um, Not to say that they don't care for the children because they absolutely do, but it's a wide variety of reasons why they're opening. Some of them, there's one down a little bit south of Indianapolis that's in a really rural area. There's no charter or private school options. They have a public school and that's it. And so there are no other options unless you're gonna like homeschool and do some tutoring. And parents are wanting other options, so they're creating it because there are no other options.
I love that ingenuity and industriousness of parents
Yeah.
creating what they can't find.
Yep.
It sounds like it may be relatively easy to be a non-accredited private
Mhm.
school in Indiana, but tell us a little bit about what some of the challenges that you're finding as you talk to prospective microschool founders, current microschool founders. What are their biggest entrepreneurial challenges?
Yeah, the biggest one, and I think this is probably across the nation, is that funding piece. Here in Indiana, we're a school choice friendly state, so we have vouchers, we have SGOs, we have ESAs. Um, the nice thing about Indiana is to receive ESAs, we don't have to be accredited. So that does open up one avenue of public funding for us. To receive school choice vouchers, you have to be an accredited school. So that is a barrier. In Indiana, for students to receive ESA, it's based on learning disabilities. And so, it's a small population of students that can receive ESAs. Thankfully, in Indiana this year, they just opened it up to siblings of students with disabilities as well. So, for example, my son just qualified because he's profoundly dyslexic. So he was able to receive ESA funding. And now my daughter, who does not have learning disabilities, also receives ESA funds. So that's been huge. One of the big problems this year, though, is that ESA ran out of funding before the application deadline closed. So it closed September 1st, and they were already out of funding and having to turn families away. So the need is there. Outside of ESA, if you're a non-accredited school, there are no other options in terms of public funding. Some schools don't want public funding, and that's totally fine. Um, but the balance, especially in some of these rural areas, the families can't afford $8,000 and $9,000 a year. And so how do you create a program that is sustainable financially without, tapping out your families or excluding families because they can't afford it? That funding piece is so, so difficult. The next biggest thing is space. Where can we meet? I know of a school here in Fort Wayne that has to completely remodel their bathroom to bring it up to code for, I ADA and stuff, and to the tune of $13,000. That it's a nearly impossible, thing that they have to do. They don't have $13,000 to put into a bathroom. If they're going to put $13,000 into something, it's going to be in creating their programs for their kids or giving scholarships. So the space thing is another huge issue. And sometimes even just in the rural areas, it's helping parents understand that this is a choice, that families can utilize this option. And even if it's not accredited, it's still a very good and valid choice. So sometimes it's just educating parents as well that microschooling in its current form does a great job and it could be a really good choice. A lot of parents are afraid to take that leap. And so just kind of coaxing that, not coaxing them, but like reassuring them, like, it's okay. And here's what you're signing up for when you do it. So yeah, there's a couple barriers here.
Yeah, and so it sounds like funding is a big one in terms of family access to some of these innovative programs. What percentage would you guess, Jill, of the 80 microschools in Indiana are currently having students access these programs with some version of school choice, some version of taxpayer funding?
I mean, without doing the actual math, I would say probably 85% or so are utilizing at least ESAs. ESAs come with very little regulation. Students receiving the funds have to take a state standardized test at the end of the year. The schools don't have to administer it. They can go through another provider. So it is an easily accessible funding source, and there are quite a few that feel comfortable utilizing it.
And you said that most of those families are accessing somewhere between $8,000 and $9,000 per student per year.
Yeah, so it depends. Like, for example, my kids, we live in Fort Wayne Community School Districts, and so our kids get, I think it's like $6,900 just for the tuition amount. And then in addition, based on the learning need, it's either anywhere from an additional $500 to like $11,000 based on the special needs. So yeah, there are some families that can access about $20,000 in funds and through ESA, which is incredible.
Yeah, and again, these ESA amounts are often right at the price point of microschools. So
Yep.
most microschools are sort of inherently lower cost. They are not trying to be like a traditional private school which often have hefty tuition price tags. So really, these ESAs and similar school choice programs are covering all or nearly all of a tuition at one of these programs.
Yep.
So I'm curious what you say, Jill, to opponents of school choice policies like these ESAs. They'll say things like, this is defunding public schools, or we're taking away money from our local neighborhood schools. What do you say to those opponents?
Yeah, I mean, I have a personal story. Like, my family is accessing those funds. And when I stepped away from the micro school that I led, we knew our options were to homeschool or to find another micro school. And yet at the same time, we couldn't necessarily afford to put two kids into a micro school. And so accessing those funds has really opened up a door for us that wouldn't otherwise be available. We would be back to homeschooling, which homeschooling is great. I love homeschooling, but it's not the best fit for our family right now. So, I mean, for me, it's sharing my own personal story and how it has impacted and really improved our lives. You know, I try to stay out of the politics of it all as much as I can, and that's why I'm friends with organizations like Institute for Quality Education, that I can say, hey, okay, you have concerns about this. Here are the experts in it, and here are the people who have helped to write the legislation. Here's a great resource for you. So I mean, other than sharing my own personal experience and how it's been impactful for me, then I just send them off to the actual experts who know what they're talking about and can explain in a much better way than I can where the money is coming from. Is it defunding public schools? No, not really. The money is there. We're just finding ways to access it.
I think that's right. And I'll often add something like, the money doesn't belong to the public schools. It's taxpayer money that is allocated toward education. And now we're seeing that education can and does look very different, and that it can be really important for families to find a different kind of education option than a traditional public or traditional private school. And that's what the microschool movement is showing. And it seems like more and more parents are gravitating to these models. I'm curious what you're seeing, Jill, with the growth. You said that I think you said 150 microschools you're predicting over the next year or more. Is that what do you see as sort of driving it? Is this education entrepreneurs launching new programs and then families flocking there? Is it more on the demand side of parents sort of wanting more options and can't find it, and then the supply
Mhm.
is catching up with these entrepreneurs? What are you seeing
Yeah.
in India?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of all of it. I think I'm working hard. I should have mentioned this. I founded the Indiana Microschool Network, which is creating a database of microschools. It's private. Won't ever share the microschool information without permission, just to protect the microschools, but creating a database for microschools and then creating, a form for parents to be able to fill out, telling us what they're looking for that we can then connect them, in conjunction with the National Microschooling Center, just doing parent information sessions. What is microschooling? Putting on Microschool 101 workshops that are open to prospective leaders and founders as well as families. I think a lot of it is just educating the general public of here are the options, and if you're not finding one, you can create it. You don't have to wait for somebody to do it. You can do it. And there's resources that can help you do it. The National Microschooling Center, I'm working with them, and I can't tell you how many pre-launch people that I work with every week, just connecting them with resources through EdChoice or through Johns Hopkins Homeschool Hub, saying like there are resources that will give you the information that you need to, one, make a choice, and two, to build it. And we'll hold your hand while you do it. We can't do the work for you, but we can help you do it. Here are connections to other people who are doing what you want to do. Learn from them so you don't have to recreate the wheel. So education really is the biggest part of all of it with parents and community members.
I love that. So clearly, if parents and prospective founders in Indiana are looking to find or build a microschool, they should turn to you,
Yeah.
and certainly the resources of the National Microschooling Center that's supporting entrepreneurs across the country. What about parents outside of Indiana, Jill? If they're maybe just starting to hear this term microschool
Hmm.
or starting to wonder about other options in their community, what advice do you have for them, for a parent just looking at what's possible?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is to just start digging, figure out who's doing it in the state and reach out. One of the things that I love about this movement is that it's not competition based, it's collaborative. And parents will reach out to the National Microschooling Center all the time, and I'm the one that is taking kind of those initial calls and feedback. And so parents are writing in saying, I'm looking for a school in this location. Well, in middle of Wyoming, I don't know the geographical area in Wyoming. I'm in Indiana, but I have no problem reaching out to the few schools that we have saying, "Hey, I have a family. I don't know if you guys are anywhere near. Can you help?" And I've never once had a micro school leader say, "Nope." I'll have a micro school leader who will be like, "Oh, they're 3 hours from us, but I'll absolutely see if what I can help find." So it's always it's collaborative. We're not looking to compete. We're not looking to grab up and say this is mine and hold it secret. If parents are looking, start trying to figure out what's in the state. And if you can't find out what's in the state, go to national organizations, go to VELA, go to National Microschooling Center. Look at EdChoice. EdChoice has a great website. National School Choice Week has a great website that has microschools on it. Start reaching out and don't be afraid to say, okay, I'm 3 hours from you. Do you know of anybody else in the state that can help? Um, we're always willing to help. That's what I love about this movement. It was we're all hands on deck. We're all willing to pitch in. We're all willing to get families connected. And if they can't, we'll help you start it.
And if you're a parent reaching out to the National Microschooling Center looking at what's available near you, it sounds like you, Jill, are the one that
Yep.
they'll talk to. What are you hearing from parents? What is driving their interest in these alternative models?
Yeah, a lot of it is just that their kids don't fit. They don't fit the traditional mold of education. A lot of them have kids that have some neurodiversity. Some of them have family lifestyles that just don't fit. Some of them have, religious beliefs or other types of beliefs that they just don't want their kids in a public setting. Um, Most of them are just looking for something out of the box, and it's these parents, honestly, they're my heroes. They're the ones that are like, okay, we don't know what it is that we're looking for, but we're willing to give it a try. Um, they, for whatever reason, they're looking at their child, well, not whatever reason. They're looking at their child as a whole human being that has their own unique interests and their own abilities, and they're saying, yeah, this doesn't work. We need something else.
So it sounds like momentum is not slowing down from what you're seeing
No.
in
Mm-mm.
Indiana. Is there a ceiling? I mean, how high can this get?
Yeah, I mean, in my perfect world, we would have, a micro school every mile. Listen, like I am not anti-public school. I am a product of public school. My kids were in public school. The only reason that we pulled out was because our family lifestyle didn't work for it. My kids thrived in public school. I'm not anti-public school. I think there is always a place for it. I think some kids thrive in it. Public schools are able to offer a lot of programming that some micro schools can't. And that's okay. I would love for parents just to have options. And the more options that parents have, the better. My goal right now in Northeast Indiana is, you know, 10 to 15 micro schools in each kind of county or area. Let's give parents options. If they choose public school, great, that's fine. But for those kiddos who are falling through the cracks, we can be that safety net.
Great. So as we begin to wrap up, Jill, I'd
Mhm.
love just for your advice to new founders. Obviously, they should connect with the National Microschooling Center. If
Yeah.
they're in Indiana, they should connect with you directly.
Mhm.
But more general advice for founders, what do you think are some things that prospective founders should be thinking about as they get ready to launch a new program?
Yeah, I think it's just figuring out what it is that they want, what resources they have that they can tap into, start connecting with people. I mean, this movement is about people, it's about children, it's about families. Start connecting with others. Talk it over. Call your friend and be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about this crazy idea." And maybe your friend is thinking about this crazy idea too, and you guys just don't even know it. Find your people. You can't do this alone. That was the part for me in the micro school that I was leading that led to this whole movement thing for me was I'm alone in this and I don't want to be alone in this. I don't know who to go to when, some legislation is being passed. What does it mean? I don't know who to go to when, we need some additional sources of funding. What are some of the best practices or what are some of the resources available? So finding your people is really going to be instrumental. You never know who is thinking about it, and I mean, I've made some crazy connections with people that I never in a million years would have thought that I would have made connections with, but it's all because they have an interest in education, and that's turned into, a full-time job doing this ecosystem building work. You just don't know what's available.
You are obviously one of the people that listeners and viewers should connect with. So, Jill,
Thank you.
if my podcast listeners do want to learn more about your work and
Yeah.
connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way would be by email, jill@microschoolingcenter.org. You can also find me on the National Microschooling website, which is national or microschoolingcenter.org. I'm currently building a website for the Indiana specific network. It's not there yet. You can also find me on Facebook under the Indiana Microschool Network.
So great. And I hope I'll see you soon at the National Microschooling
Yes,
Center's
I
Summit
will be
in
there. I'm super
October,
excited. Yes.
bringing together microschooling leaders from across the country in Nevada in October. So it's
Yep.
exciting times. It seems like you're just as enthusiastic as I am. And obviously, the numbers are just staggering of what you're seeing in Indiana. Looking forward to continuing to see how much growth there is in your state and nationwide. So Jill Haskins, thank you so much for being on the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you so much.